Well, I have a question for the Marines here this morning. What do the words Semper Fidelis mean? Always faithful. I learned those words several years ago, many years ago, when my brother became a Marine. Semper Fidelis, or Semper Fi, is the Marine Corps motto. But let me read to you something that I read several years ago. It said this: Semper Fidelis, more than a motto, a way of life. Semper Fidelis distinguishes the Marine Corps bond from any other. It goes beyond teamwork. It is a brotherhood and lasts for life. Latin for always faithful, Semper Fidelis became the Marine Corps motto in 1883. It guides Marines to remain faithful to the mission at hand, to each other, to the Corps, and to country, no matter what. Becoming a Marine is a transformation that cannot be undone, and Semper Fi reminds us of that. Once made, a Marine will forever live by the ethics and values of the Corps. There is no such thing as an ex-Marine. That's a powerful statement. And I find it, impressive. It stirs up feelings of pride and strength and belonging. And that's great. And although I can't pretend to have experienced this firsthand, it seems to me that this identity, this attitude, is part of why the Corps is as strong and as effective as it is. Would you agree? All right. But do you know that these ideas are also true, even more true, of our relationship with God as Christians? The statement talked about transformation and belonging. When you believe in Jesus, you were changed. You were made new. 2 Corinthians 5 says that if you are in Christ, the old is passed away, the new has come. And it says you are a new creation. And you belong. You are a child of God. You are part of the body of Christ forever. Nothing can change that. What's the promise that we're told in Scripture? I will never what? Leave you nor forsake you. It's forever. And the statement talked about the idea of faithfulness no matter what. Now, first, this description fits no one better than God. He is perfectly faithful all the time, no matter what. There is no greater faithfulness. And He deserves our faithfulness. And as His people, we are called to be faithful like He is. In our passage today, we will see faithfulness in action, both the faithfulness of God and faithfulness to God. First, we see Joseph's fidelity in Potiphar's house. So we'll begin this morning, chapter 39 and verse 1. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord, Yahweh, was with him, and that the Lord, Yahweh, caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him. And he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord Yahweh blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. So, after that interruption that we looked at last week, that interruption to Joseph's story that told us what was going on in Judah's life at the same time as what we're seeing here in Joseph's life, we return now to Joseph's story. And so we remember that Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery. They sold him to traders who would bring him down to Egypt. And we pick up his story here after they've arrived in Egypt and Joseph has been sold. And we get mixed feelings about what we're told here. Because first we read, Joseph has been bought. In other words, he is a slave. But do you remember his dreams? He's supposed to rule. God has promised him that he will lead his family. But this seems impossible now. I mean, he's far away from home in a foreign land, and he's a slave. That's kind of the opposite of ruling. But there are some things that seem positive as well here. Even though he is slave, who is he bought by? He's bought by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. And so Joseph is now connected to an important, prominent person who is himself connected to the king. And so it appears that he's already on his way up, in a sense. But whatever is happening, God is in control. And God is faithfully working in Joseph's life. In fact, in the verses that we just read, and the rest that we're going to read this morning, notice how often God is mentioned. Did you hear the Lord or Yahweh over and over and over again in the verses we just read? It's interesting that in the chapters just before this, in the chapters that told us about Joseph's dreams and his brothers selling him, God wasn't mentioned at all in those chapters. But here he's mentioned many times, and he's called by his covenant name, Yahweh. A reminder, every time you see the word Lord in all caps, it's the covenant name of God, the personal name of God, Yahweh. So make no mistake, Joseph has not been abandoned by God. God is working. And this is not just a story about Joseph. This story is about God working in and through Joseph. So we also read that Joseph is successful. He does really well. He was a house slave and had the opportunity to advance. But why is he successful? We're told it's because God is with him. And notice that Potiphar knows this is the case. He knows this is why Joseph is successful. He could tell that God is blessing Joseph. But you know what this also means? This also means that Potiphar knew who Joseph's God is. He had heard about him. He knows about Yahweh. To know that Yahweh is blessing him. He knows what Joseph believes. He knows who Joseph serves. And this means that Joseph was not shy about talking about God. He didn't hide his faith. And because of that, Potiphar knows that it's God that's causing Joseph to be successful. But because Joseph does so well, he is promoted. And he becomes Potiphar's personal assistant. He is, as Potiphar's right-hand man, Joseph is in charge of everything, responsible for everything Potiphar has. So we're told Potiphar has no concern about anything but the food he ate. In other words, he doesn't worry about anything except his own personal needs. Everything else is taken care of. Joseph has proven himself, and Potiphar has complete trust in Joseph. And then we find out that God blesses Potiphar on account of Joseph. Sound familiar? Do you remember how Laban was blessed on account of Jacob? Until Laban turned against Jacob and started trying to take advantage of him. But God is keeping his promise to Abraham. I will bless those who bless you. And so here we have Joseph. He was sold by his brothers. He is in a foreign land. He is a slave. Would you call that a good situation? No. But God is with him. And things are going well. You might even say they're going pretty great. I mean, considering that he's a slave, but things are going very well. And we even get this last statement in verse 6, which seems to come out of nowhere, but it's a positive statement. It tells us that Joseph is really good looking. A blessing from God. Joseph has been blessed with good looks too. But this statement is here to set up what is about to happen. And this blessing will bring some unwanted attention. Verse 7. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." After a time, so that means some time has passed. We don't know exactly how long, but it's been long enough for Joseph to do good work that was noticed by Potiphar and for him to climb the ladder and advance to the highest position. But at some point, Potiphar's wife takes notice of this good-looking young man who is working in the house. And she is very direct and tells him, "Sleep with me." Now, there are a couple temptations here for Joseph. The first is very obvious. He has the opportunity to be immoral and to fulfill his sexual desires outside of marriage. The second is she is a powerful woman, or married to a very powerful man. And if he pleases her by doing what she wants, maybe she could help him advance or better his situation. But let's keep reading, verse 8. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. So Joseph's response is, "No, and let me tell you why." So he goes on and he tells her why. Why? Well, first of all, he must honor his master. Joseph has been entrusted with great responsibility. The only thing in the entire household that Joseph doesn't have free access to is Potiphar's wife. Obviously, because she's his wife. And so this would violate his master's trust and his marital rights. It's totally wrong. But the second reason is that he won't sin against God. You see, doing this, what she has requested or demanded, doing this would be first and foremost a sin against God. God is the one who established marriage and created sex and set the boundaries for sex within marriage. And doing this would violate God's standards and God's holy character. So he simply says, I can't. But she refuses to accept his answer. And she doesn't care about his morality. And so she just keeps making advances day after day, and she tries to wear him down. Now, it appears she may have lessened her request and started asking him just to lay beside her or be with her, hang out with her. And if that's the case, she's probably hoping that if he concedes to this one thing, takes that first step, that then she could get him to take the following steps to go further. But he refuses, and he avoids even being around her. Verse 11. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. Joseph is doing his work, and he has to be in the house to do his work. But no one else is around right now. And she finds him, and she takes advantage of the situation. And she grabs him by his robe. But he gets out of there as fast as he can. But in the process, either she pulls the robe off of him or he slips out of it to get away. Because she wasn't going to let go. But he just lets the robe go and he runs. He wasn't staying there. He got out of the house. Verse 13. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought among us, she's talking about her husband here, see, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, this is the way your servant treated me, his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. So having his robe now gives her a new idea. She's taking revenge for being spurned, but she is also protecting herself from getting in trouble, from any consequences that might come should her husband find out what she's been up to. I mean, Joseph could have just told him, but she wants to make sure she doesn't get in trouble. So she calls the other men of the house in, and because she needs some witnesses. I mean, no one was there to see it, but right away she gets people on board with her. She gets them there to tell them the story right away so they know it and they can repeat it. And she tells them that Joseph came in to take advantage of her. And she is careful to tell them that she screamed. This is important because her screaming shows that she didn't want it to happen, that this wasn't a consensual act, that he came in and was trying to take advantage of her. And so she screams. And so in her story, the wrong all falls on Joseph, not on her. And then she says, he left his robe and ran. Now, this is the only true part of her story. And she is a manipulative one. She tells the story a little differently to the men, the other slaves, the men of the house, than she does to her husband. She tries to get the men on her side by relating with them. I mean, how does she do that? Well, she puts distance between her and her husband, just like there would be from the slaves and her husband, the master slave. But she puts distance between her and her husband by blaming her husband. He did this to us. And she says he brought in this Hebrew, a foreigner. She's playing on their prejudices. Joseph isn't an Egyptian like us, but he brought in this foreigner. Of course, he would try something like this. And then she says that Joseph came in to laugh or to make a joke of us, including herself or including the slaves with her. So they're all offended by it. They've all been offended by Joseph. But then when she tells her husband, well, she still blames him for what's happened, but she puts the emphasis on Joseph taking advantage of her specifically. He came to laugh at me. And laugh here has the idea of humiliating someone or treating them lightly or disrespectfully. So he came in and made a joke of me. But she's emphasizing how inappropriate it is for Joseph to have made advances at her. And she calls Joseph a slave to highlight his low status. Because Joseph, he has a lot of respect. He's earned a lot of respect. He's looked at very highly. In fact, he's in the highest possible position in the house. And so she's trying to lower people's view of him by alluding to the fact that he's a slave. And so she tells her story, and it says that Potiphar burns with anger. But who is he angry at? I think that's a good question. We immediately think, he's angry at Joseph. I mean, that's the way it seems, but that might not be the case. I mean, Potiphar had a lot of trust in Joseph because Joseph had earned that trust over time. And it's possible that he knows not only Joseph's character, but he also knows his wife's character. And it's possible he doesn't really believe her. And he may be angry at her for her infidelity. And angry for her ruining the good thing he had going, because now he has to take care of his own house. Joseph's not there to do it for him. Okay, but why do I say that? There's some evidence here. First of all, it's a vague statement. It just says he burned with anger. It doesn't specify who he's angry at. And we're told that Joseph is thrown in prison. Now, in that culture, we would expect that in the case of rape or attempted rape, he would have been put to death. But he's not. He's just put in prison. Seems unusual. Also, he's put in prison with the king's prisoners, not the common prison. All right? He's in the federal prison, not the state penitentiary with all the hardened criminals. It's not as bad. So it appears that Potiphar has given him a much lighter sentence than he could have. But even if Joseph is in the nicer prison, he's still in prison for something he did not do. And this is far from ruling. But the significant thing about this is that he's in the right place. He's in the right prison. You see, he's in the place where he will meet men who are closely connected to Pharaoh. And this will eventually connect Joseph to Pharaoh. God is still working. So God has been faithful, and Joseph has been faithful. But Joseph's situation, is it improving? It doesn't seem to be. It doesn't really look like it. And he might wonder, what is God doing? But Joseph has been faithful in Potiphar's house, and now we'll see his fidelity even in prison. Look at chapter 39, verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. Sounds a whole lot like what was happening in Potiphar's house. Verse 23, the keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord, Yahweh, was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. And so Joseph is in an even worse place than he was before as just a slave, but God is still with him. God is showing him loyal, loving kindness. And again, he causes Joseph to be successful. And so the warden of the prison, he notices Joseph's skills and his obedience and his trustworthiness, and he gives him responsibilities. And he doesn't worry about anything that Joseph is in charge of. This is pretty amazing considering that he is a prisoner himself. Chapter 40, verse 1. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the office of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And so some time passes. And again, we don't know how long he was in Potiphar's house or how long he was in prison. But the whole time put together, up to now, is about 10 years. So from ages 17 to 30, he was a slave or in prison for a crime he didn't commit. It's a long time that Joseph was in a bad situation, waiting, wondering, and remaining faithful to God. But a couple of new guys show up in the prison. It's Pharaoh's cupbearer and his baker. Now, these are both very important positions because they were people who gave food and drink to Pharaoh, to the king. And they were responsible to protect the king. You see, poisoning was a big worry back then. It was a big fear that people had because you could very easily just put some poison or something into the king's food and he's done, he's offed, and you can put someone else in his place. And so, obviously, the king didn't want that to happen. And so so these people had the responsibility to protect Pharaoh. And because of this position, because they were guarding the king, oftentimes the cupbearer was a close confidant and an advisor to the king. And so it was a position of great privilege and influence. But they were both accused of treason against Pharaoh. They committed some offense against him, and they're awaiting sentencing. But they're put in Joseph's care. So he is responsible to serve them. Let's keep reading, verse 5. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. So when Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. And so he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." And so one morning, Joseph sees them, and he can tell that they're upset. He's actually concerned for them. And he genuinely cares for those who are under his charge, and he wants to help them. So he asks them, "Why are you upset?" Well, it's because they both had dreams. And they're similar, and they know they mean something, but they don't know what they mean, and they have no one to interpret the dreams for them. Now, the interesting thing is there were people in Egypt who specialized in interpreting dreams. They studied dreams, and they had it down to a science. But the cupbearer and the baker are where? In prison. So they have no access to an interpreter, to one of these specialists, because they're in prison. But Joseph has a very simple answer for them. Interpretation belongs to who? God. So he says, so just let me know. I mean, Joseph is very clear. It's not the study of dreams or a person that gives an interpretation, it's God. And God knows all, and God is in control of the future, and he gives interpretation. And God will give the interpretation to those he chooses. And Joseph knows God, he has a close relationship with God, and he has faith that God will give him the answer, that he will reveal the interpretation. So he tells them, tell me your dreams. So, verse 9. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches, and as soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. And so the cupbearer, he quickly tells Joseph his dream. It appears he doesn't have a guilty conscience. He's not worried about what the interpretation is going to mean, and so he has nothing to hide. And so he tells the dream. And his dream pictures the act of taking wine and giving it to Pharaoh, which symbolizes that the cupbearer will be restored to his position. Now, Joseph has faith that God will make this happen. And so he asks the cupbearer to remember him. Now, remember doesn't just mean to think about, but it means to turn your attention to attend to come to the aid of someone. He's asking him to speak to Pharaoh on his behalf so he could be set free. And the cupbearer, he will be found innocent. And so if he was falsely accused here, he should be very understanding of Joseph's situation and want to help Joseph. Verse 16. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head. They used to carry baskets on their heads. And in the uppermost basket, there were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. Now, the baker, he didn't tell his dream until he heard that the first one was a favorable interpretation. And when he heard that the cupbearer would be restored, the baker, he heard that the cupbearer will be restored, but we also hear then that the baker will what? Be put to death. All of this suggests that the cupbearer was innocent, but the baker was not. He was guilty. He was hesitant to tell his dream because he thought he might get a negative interpretation, which it is. And after hearing the first interpretation, he was hoping, though, that his also would be positive, which is not. He will be put to death. And then the birds eating the bread symbolizes that he doesn't protect the food for Pharaoh. And notice the wording. Joseph tells the cupbearer that Pharaoh will lift up his head, meaning restore him. Then when he's talking to the baker, he starts with the same words. He says, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you. So it sounds positive at first, and then it's like, oh no. He will be put to death, and he will be given a dishonorable death. He is going to die as a traitor. He won't be buried, but his body will be hung on display out in the open and left for the vultures or other scavenger birds to eat his body. We'll keep reading, verse 20. On the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. So he brought them up. 21, he restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. It all happens just as Joseph said it would. God knew what would happen. But after the cupbearer is restored, he doesn't remember Joseph. He doesn't do anything to help Joseph. He's selfish and he's only concerned with his own well-being and his own freedom and his own position, and he pays no attention to Joseph. He does nothing to help him. So Joseph just has to sit and wait. He's in the same place he was before he met those two men. He's in prison and without any connection to Pharaoh. So he'll have to wait until God brings him out. And he may wonder what God's doing. I mean, it looks bad. It looks hopeless. It has been years that he's been in this situation. But he remains faithful to God because he knows that God is faithful. But what can we learn from this? We learn a lot about faithfulness. God is faithful. He's always faithful. Even if we find ourselves in difficult, bad circumstances. And we, his people, are also called to be faithful. Always faithful, no matter what. So let's talk about fidelity in our world. First, God is faithful to us. God created us to have a relationship with him, but our sin broke that relationship with God, cut us off from him, destined us for judgment in hell for the sin we deserve, or the punishment we deserve for our sin. But God's word says what? While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus came to die for us. He was sent when we were not faithful. He came and lived a sinless life and died on the cross, taking our punishment on himself so we could be forgiven and made right with God, reconciled to God. That's God's faithfulness. That's his love. Everyone who believes in Jesus is forgiven and becomes a child of God and will be with him forever. And God continues to be faithful. Even when we are going through hard times, he's faithful. Even when we are suffering, he is faithful. As his children, he is with us. He is always with us. The Apostle Paul, he tells us that the suffering in this life is nothing compared to the awesome glory we will experience in God's presence in the future. And James, he tells us to consider it joy when we face trials. Not because we enjoy suffering, but because we know that God uses those trials to grow us, to make us more like Jesus. God is always faithful. Joseph was either a slave or a prisoner for 13 years. He was in a bad situation for a long time. Now do something. Think back over the last 13 years. Can you even remember when 13 years ago was? I'll tell you when it was. It's when I came here. So we've been here, my family's been here for a little over 13 years. Think back over that time. A lot of life has happened. That's a long time to be stuck like Joseph is. But God is with him. And sometimes we wonder when or if God will change our situation. And the truth is, he may or he may not. But maybe you've been dealing with some hardship for a long time. Remember that God is faithful. That God is with you. God is always faithful. Semper Fidelis. No matter what our circumstances are, he is with us. And now let's talk about our faithfulness to God. We are told to be faithful through showing honor and respect to those over us, like Joseph did to Potiphar. He refused to betray the trust that Potiphar had placed in him. Why? Because he refused to dishonor God. We can show honor and respect to our supervisors, to our employers, to our teachers, to the police, to anyone who is in authority over us. And we can serve them well. Why? Why would we do that? Well, in order to honor God. Do your work as to the Lord. Do all that you do to the glory of God. And we are to be faithful in purity and obedience. Joseph refused Potiphar's wife and obeyed God. Now, most of us won't find ourselves in that exact same situation. But you may. Or you may find yourself in a similar situation or with a similar type temptation. I mean, seduction can come in many forms. Seduction can come in the form of flirting. It seems so simple. Seduction can come from our TVs. Seduction can come from the internet, from our phones. Be pure and obedient in the way you talk and the way you interact with others and the things that you do. Be pure and obedient in the things that you look at and the thoughts that you entertain. Thirdly, we are to be faithful in our concern for those in our care. Joseph cared about the cupbearer and the baker. So whoever you are responsible, whether it's a family member or all of your family, whether it's your coworkers or those you serve with in ministry or those who you are ministering to, do you truly care about them? God is deeply concerned about people. Being faithful to him means that we will also truly love and care about people. And fourthly, we are to be faithful in perseverance, to live for God no matter what our circumstances are. Again, Joseph was a slave or a prisoner for 13 years, and he continued in obedience and in trust, and he waited for God's promise to be fulfilled. We may get anxious, we may get impatient or discouraged, but God isn't always in a hurry. And he knows what's best. So believe him, trust him, and wait on him. And just one other thing I want to mention this. Faithfulness isn't primarily about doing. It's about a relationship. Let me summarize it by reading this verse. In fact, you heard it once already this morning, or verses. Titus 2, 11 through 14. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession who are zealous for good works. We have a relationship with God through Jesus. We've been saved, and he is teaching us, and he is changing us. So with patience and with endurance and with godliness and with obedience, we live in this sinful world. And we wait. We wait for Jesus to come, when we will be with him forever in his glory. Semper Fi, always faithful. This is a fitting description for God. He is always faithful. He is leading us. He is working in us. He is with us always. And Semper Fi is our goal in life, to always be faithful, to live in a manner worthy of God, to live for our God, to live in a way that brings him glory. This is what we pursue. Always faithful, no matter what.